hello, James Ruzicka. Why you brought your reel-to-reel recorder to this hotel room where we're recording the pod?
Sorry, wait a second. I've got to take my headphones off here. Yes. As you can see, with slightly different popcorn counter this week, we've set up our equipment here in a downtown Premier Inn in Wimbledon, here on the 5th floor, looking out over the beautiful vista of South London, with this huge Revox 2-track recorder. It's magnificent, isn't it? Fantastic.
How do you get it in here? You must have had a dolly.
Yes, big heavy bag. I think the days of the smartphone are limited. I think I'm gonna switch over recording to reel because it just sounds warmer and more analog. But I will warn you, if you're while we are in the hotel room, if you're planning to go to the lavatory, don't flush. Because something very bad will happen. As you can see, I've set the popcorn counter up tonight to resemble which Gene Hackman film?
Oh, it has to be The Conversation.
Yes, The Conversation.
One of the best ever, yeah.
Which I mean, possibly his best film? Possibly Francis Ford Coppola's second best film, do you think?
Second or third, yeah. I mean, I love Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, I would put Apocalypse Now top.
It'd be better with Gene Hackman, though. Any one of those films would be better with Gene Hackman. I don't think he's in Godfather.
I think if you made any film between like 1967 and 2000, then you would have been better off having Gene Hackman, I think. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm surprised that, he obviously was out of the spotlight for a good number of years. I guess his last credit here is 2004. So that makes The Royal Tenenbaums is one of his very last films. He only makes a couple other films after that.
And it wasn't like his retirement wasn't like a big fated moment, was it? It was he just kind of just sort of slipped away and quietly closed the door after himself, didn't he, I think?
It's well done. I mean, God, you're in your 70s. You've acted for 40 years or whatever. Yeah. Take a break. Enjoy that New Mexico sunshine.
2 Oscars, nothing to prove. Yeah, why not get out and enjoy it, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I have tremendous respect for the man.
So a very sad story about his death, which hit the news a few weeks ago, and we are still kind of getting details trickling through in the news. Every time I read a little bit more about the story, I get a little bit more depressed. It's all a bit dismal. But the career of the man as a whole, outstanding. Not necessarily because he made exclusively great films. So I don't think everything he touched was brilliant. No. But he was always brilliant in anything that he touched.
Oh, I like that. Oh, what a writer. Oh, I love things like that, those little twists.
I didn't realize it. So it's interesting reading his biography, knowing that we were going to talk about it a little bit today and setting up the hotel room. So he was like in the Marines, wasn't he?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that was before he took acting lessons or acting classes somewhere, right?
And I think apparently he dropped out of school and lied about his age and then joined the Marines.
Oh boy, wow!
So it's once you know that, you start to understand why it was that he had the kind of screen presence that he did, because he always seemed like tremendously tough, but he looked like a guy who like was tough in a realistic way. He looked like he got tough from being a Marine and fighting guys in bars rather than going to the gym and injecting steroids, which is how kind of most tough men get their tough looks these days on screen.
Yeah.
He looked tough because he probably just lived tough.
Yes.
And he transmitted that through the lens of the camera onto the celluloid. That's kind of the cornerstone of his stardom, I think, because he was always, in everything that he did, he was kind of a little bit dangerous and tough and uncompromising. Even in films like The Conversation, where his character was essentially shy and retiring and someone from the background, and not a man of action. There was something about his physicality that made him just kind of formidable, I think, in every role.
I think he had a tremendous range, actually. It seemed like he could play anyone. He played cowboys, right? He played an estranged father in the Royal Tenenbaums. He could be a commander. He could be a coach. I think he had a couple films where he was a coach. And the part in The Conversation is he's nerdy, right? He's an electronics guy and a sound man. Uh-oh. I hope Mike Rimmer doesn't listen to this. Not all sound guys are nerds, but he's kind of nerdy and he's got the pocket protector or whatnot. And he's not coming from this really high place, but he has this massive comeuppance by the end because he's sort of undone by, other sound detection and whatnot, and kind of gets in a little bit over his head. So kind of a normal guy, but he could also play be a strong protagonist and be the the commander or whatnot, or the head coach. So he had great range. I think you're right. I think what you said before was he was just good. He did a good job in everything he did, even if they were not the best films. But I mean, I think every actor has those not the best films all over their resume as well. So, but he had some great parts too. So I think he's one of a kind, really. And
yeah,
I'm glad that he went out and had some time to retire before he parted.
So I didn't really realize that his first sort of big screen role of any note was Bonnie and Clyde, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
1967. So. And then it was only 4 years after that he got the Best Actor Oscar for The French Connection.
He's got a lot of films right there, yeah. And I didn't know there was a French Connection 2. Did you know that? I've never seen that film.
I've never seen French Connection 2. Have you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, just looking at the IMDb right now, that's the first time I've even seen the title, which makes me giggle. I know it shouldn't make me giggle, but I'm giggling.
Directed by John Frankenheimer, isn't it? French Connection 2. So actually, maybe a cash in. And it's funny how my main mental image of The French Connection is Gene Hackman's hat.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of the big kind of car chase, and it's action packed, but it's the hat that sticks in my mind.
It does. Well, we've done our work on the hats in films.
Hats are an important part of the Western cinematic canon, as we have proven in previous podcasts.
We could turn this one into another pod about hats.
It can't be enough pods about hats, I think.
No one would blame us.
Do you remember when you first became aware that Gene Hackman existed? What's the first film that you saw him in that you can recall?
This shocks me because I think it's before The Conversation. Wow. It's The Poseidon Adventure.
Poseidon Adventure!
By that time, by the time I had some consciousness to me, that was already on television. So I always assumed it was a TV movie, and it was one of that brand of disaster picks.
Yeah,
but that's
the early 70s were packed with them.
But so I wouldn't have seen that in the theater, but probably in the mid or late 70s, but it was already on television. So that's probably where I remember it. And I just, oh God, I wasn't thinking about Gene Hackman. I was thinking about that boat's going upside down? What? So that was probably the first time I was, aware of him. But that's a couple of years after, is that right? Maybe a year after French Connection.
Yeah, a year after French Connection, 1972, The Poseidon Adventure.
And then a couple of years before The Conversation. So it's just very funny that film is sandwiched in between these two, classics of cinema. He's done what ultimately ended up as a TV movie.
I don't know which came first, The Poseidon Adventure or Towering Inferno. But whichever one came first, I'm sure people were scratching their heads thinking, how can we make that film again? But, slightly different.
Towering Inferno. That one, I think, must have gone straight to television, but maybe not.
First time I remember seeing Gene Hackman was Superman, 1978. Which is one of those rare times when everybody in the family trooped out to watch a film at the cinema. I remember being tremendously excited to see Superman.
I think I probably first saw him on screen in a theater in Young Frankenstein.
Oh!
Because I was just the youngest in the family, so if someone had to babysit me or if my parents wanted to go out, they'd have to take me to stuff. So I'm sure that I saw that film in the theater. And he plays the blind man who Frankenstein encounters, as I recall. And he's very good in that. That's definitely a comedy. And he had his fair share of comedies, too, I suppose. So,
he's rolled it. Lex Luthor in Superman is essentially a comedic role, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's he has that same kind of tough guy, frightening bloke energy, but he's doing it with a comedic spin. Yeah. And the paycheck for Superman was certainly good enough that he came back to do Superman 3, I think, or 4. They enticed him back for one of them anyway.
Yeah. Another thing I respect is just, I don't think he was never like a real big box office opener. He wasn't that kind of actor who would just open a film and it would be huge. So I think he just earned his money, and then it seems like he just enjoyed it in a very quiet, modest way. You gotta like that, I think. There's a certain modesty about him. He was never in tabloids. He was never causing trouble in public or anything like that. He was just a professional.
Well, you say that. I did do a little bit of reading up on his biography, and it turns out I think he was a bit of a hellraiser sometimes. He certainly had his demons.
Yeah.
I think he was arrested for beating someone up following a car accident.
Ooh.
I did read like in the background of the Royal Tenenbaums. Apparently, he was very difficult to get on with during the filming of that.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure.
Really didn't see eye to eye with Wes Anderson, to the extent that apparently Bill Murray had to keep Gene Hackman in check on set.
Wow.
And Bill Murray would come to set on days when he wasn't on the call sheet, so he wasn't shooting. Bill Murray would still turn up to stop Gene Hackman having a go at Wes Anderson.
Oh my God.
So I think he did have his demons. I think he had like an unhappy childhood, didn't he? I think his father left the family when he was like 13 or like very young, and
Yeah.
I'm sure he grew up with anxiety and worry and fear and anger about that.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that is part of what fed into his performances.
Yeah.
And and you read about the young Gene Hackman, and he seemed to have been extremely hungry, but not an obvious tip for success actor. So I think he's kind of struggled to get work in New York, and then he went to California, and I think he was in the same acting class as Dustin Hoffman, and he and Hoffman were both voted like the two least likely to succeed because they were kind of either small or kind of ugly and sort of beefy.
Yeah.
And neither of them looked like Hollywood leading men. And I think people's expectations were low. So I think the two of them hung out sort of quite a lot during their kind of early career.
Yeah.
And kind of Robert Duvall, I think, as well. I think it was like the three of them were these kind of struggling actors who were also buddies, sort of sharing apartments and bum gigs, trying to get a start.
I mean, you see Robert Duvall as early as To Kill a Mockingbird, which must be like 62 or 63. I don't know if he's a teenager at that point or maybe early 20s or whatnot. And then you remember Dustin Hoffman by 67. But I mean, Gene Hackman does have a number of credits. You're right. Like he wasn't very well known until, I guess, The French Connection. But
now 67, is that Mrs. Robinson?
Might be 69. It's definitely late 60s.
Right, okay.
Right in there, 67, 68, 69, somewhere in there. Hackman's got some credits around the same time. So, I'd heard that they even, I don't know if some of them at one point had lived together, they'd roomed together, and they were coming up in the classes together, and their careers started at the same time. So that means, those two guys, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall, must be same thing, late 80s, early 90s at this point.
Yeah, I guess. I think Gene Hackman, was he 95 when he died?
95, yeah. He seemed like he had this other life beforehand, which I think is a great skill as an actor, is something you can tap into, some more real life experience as opposed to, going right into drama school and then maybe going right into advertisements or soap operas and then getting a bigger role. So, I mean, that Marine experience definitely helped him out and obviously helped him beat up that guy in the car accident. It's one of those gongs that we keep beating on the pod, isn't it? Which genuine art comes from lived human experience. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And Gene Hackman had some lived human experience to put on screen. Absolutely. Because I made some little notes before we came to the hotel room, and at the bottom of I've written here, this is my summary of everything I wrote down about Gene Hackman. I wrote authenticity and commitment. And that's kind of what, no matter what he was cast in, he always came across as authentic, and he always committed to the role. This is an actor who never phoned it in.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever phoned it in. Even in the not so good movies, he never phoned it in.
Yeah.
I think the first movie I remember seeing him in, as an adult, where I kind of slightly understood, or maybe understood a little bit more about what I liked or what I was impressed by, was Mississippi Burning. Have you seen that?
I have, a long time ago.
Which is Alan Parker movie, isn't it? Now, Alan Parker, great British filmmaker, not somebody you hear discussed very often these days. I feel like he's a little bit of a forgotten figure of that kind of like the 80s, early 90s film scene. It's one of my claims to fame. I remember sitting opposite Alan Parker on the tube. This must be like 20 years ago or something like that, and kind of recognizing, wait, that's Alan Parker over there. And he had this big, I think this was the time when he was head of the BFI.
Oh,
He was going into town, to go to the office or whatever. Had this big stack of papers and scripts that he was going through on the tube.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, that's Alan Parker. And no one else on the tube blinked an eye, because who's Alan Parker? No one knows who Alan Parker is. But yeah, Mississippi Burning. Gene Hackman, Willem Dafoe, terrific picture.
Yeah, great film.
Difficult to imagine a film where Willem Dafoe was young, but he was young in that film, 1988.
Hasn't he always kind of looked a little bit... I love Willem Dafoe. Love the guy. He's always looked a little chiseled, let's say.
That's a good word for
it. He's got the Bronson face for screen, so he's automatic for so many parts. But
that camera loves a Bronson face. Yep.
Put some glasses on him. He's got those horn rim glasses, and he looks like anyone out of the early 60s. For sure. Square. Kind of looks kind of square. Yeah. It's funny. I don't want to get too off track with the Alan Parker thing, but God, The Wall, Pink Floyd, The Wall is an Alan Parker film.
Yeah.
But also Angel Heart, which
Yes.
I love that film. It's kind of perverse and silly, but I thought it was great. It scared the hell out of me. It's one of those films that I really was frightened by and thought about a lot in my sleep when I shouldn't be thinking about films.
Yeah. Fantastic atmosphere in that film. Yeah, great. I would love to go back to it now and see. I wonder whether we can pair it up with something and have an excuse to watch Angel Heart, because I wonder how it has survived.
Yeah.
But in the kind of late 80s, it was, tremendously hot property. Wasn't it?
So he had a run there, Alan Parker, like from whatever The Wall is, 82, 83 in that area through Mississippi Burning for sure. And
also, I think before that he'd made Birdie, hadn't he?
I love Birdie. That's right.
Yep. And then the Commitments was like a big hit for him as well. The Commitments was like number one at the box office for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks in the UK.
Yeah,
incredibly successful.
It's funny that this is becoming an Alan Parker pod, but maybe we should. Next time we'll start an Alan Parker pod, and then maybe we'll start talking about Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman. So Gene Hackman won 2 Oscars, right? One of them we already covered, The French Connection, won an Oscar for that great hat.
Yeah.
And what hat was he wearing for his other Oscar-winning performance?
A toupee hat.
That was Superman. That might have been quite a lot of the late movies as well. I don't know.
I suspect it was is he in Unforgiven? Cowboy hat, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Stetson, I think, surely. Yeah, so he was in Unforgiven, 1992. I remember going to see that at Elephant and Castle Cinema.
Oh, wow.
I think when smoking was still allowed in cinemas. I think it was in 1992, and it was it was almost like an immersive experience. There was as much cigar smoke in the cinema as there was on screen.
Yeah,
but Unforgiven, what a fantastic. Kind of like it was like the beginning of that era of late period ironic westerns.
Yeah,
and possibly Clint Eastwood's best film, Unforgiven.
Among them, yeah. I'm not a huge Eastwood fan, so
okay. Even though you love Dirty Harry so much.
Yeah, Dirty Harry. Oh my God, awfully good. But did he direct Dirty Harry? I don't think so. Did he?
I wonder whether he might have directed some of the later ones.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think he directed the first one, but
the actual first one. I think he might have. Sure, I can do. I
think he might have sat in the chair for like Dirty Harry 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
We might have to look that up.
I can look it up.
Then 4 years. Now I bet you haven't seen this. 4 years after Unforgiven, Extreme Measures. Have you seen that? 1996.
I don't think so. What's the synopsis?
It's Gene Hackman and Hugh Grant in a medical thriller.
Oh, really?
Yes, which I saw, I think, shortly after leaving medical school.
Yeah.
So it was completely, utterly up my street.
Yeah.
And it features this fantastic plot point about an epidural. So it's one of anaesthetist's favourite films, Extreme Measures. But it is hampered by the fact that it has one of the most generic titles ever. Extreme Measures is utterly devoid of meaning. There's no content in that title at all. You could call any one of 100 films from the last few years Extreme Measures. Doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't suit the subject matter by any means, no.
But despite the generic title, it was kind of Hugh Grant when he was still young and turning on the charm.
Okay.
And Gene Hackman in full Gene Hackman mode. Very entertaining picture, actually. Good fun. And I tell you who else is in Extreme Measures? A young Sarah Jessica Parker.
No.
Yeah, back before she went to TV.
Wow.
I think she plays like a nurse, I think. So, good fun. I don't know whether it's still around anymore. If you can find Extreme Measures, it's probably on one of the streamers somewhere. But, yeah, good fun.
Dirty Harry's Don Siegel and Clint Eastwood, so I doubt it's a co-direction, but one of them might have taken over for the other or something like that.
I wonder whether Clint did some second unit work, something like that, which ended up getting bigger and bigger.
Yep.
I think things like that scene where Dirty Harry is on the that little kind of window washing machine, and he goes up to the 5th floor and he catches the guy who's going to. I think that sequence is directed by Clint.
Oh, wow.
I think so, but I could be wrong. But we're talking about a different podcast now. Poor Gene Hackman.
No, this is the Alan Parker, Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman pod. That's what the show notes say. I'm reading right from the notes we've got here. Everything has been intentional, all these detours.
I tell you what Gene Hackman didn't do a lot of, and that is sequels. So he was enticed into doing Superman 2. Yeah. He did do French Connection 2. There is one other sequel in his filmography that I've written on my list here of Gene Hackman films that I've enjoyed. But do you know what it is?
It's not French Connection 2. I just found out about this film, so I have no idea.
So I feel like we've opened up a whole new world for you.
Did he do I see that he's done a Twilight film. Would that have been a sequel, or is that the first?
No, I don't think that's anything. I think that's a different Twilight.
It is a different Twilight.
I don't think that is. I don't think that's vampires and werewolves.
I don't know. What
there was a sequel to The Conversation, the film whose set we are sitting in right now. No. What is the sequel? Do you know what the sequel to The Conversation is?
Oh, it has a different title.
Yeah.
Oh, that's clever. I think it's Extreme Measures 2.
Oh, very nearly. It's a Tony Scott film called Enemy of the State.
Oh,
it's a kind of a fairly sort of glossy, unsophisticated Will Smith movie.
Okay, huh?
About a guy who is like in surveillance and being surveilled. Yeah. And halfway through the film, he meets up with Gene Hackman.
Oh,
who is actually probably, although it's never explicitly said, he is probably the same character that he was playing in The Conversation. But now he lives in this kind of converted warehouse inside a Faraday cage. Gene Hackman's character is so paranoid that he blocks all radio signals in and out of his apartment.
Oh my!
It's not a worthy successor.
Okay. But it is a sequel.
Yeah, to Coppola's second best movie. But it's one of those kind of cinematic curios. Will Smith, he's not shy about sequels, but Gene Hackman, appears in Enemy of the State.
Yeah, I think so. He made some good choices. Made some bad choices too, but that's definitely. I think it's a good choice not to get too carried away with sequels for sure, because they just get diluted and it seems like a money-making machine.
But then you only end up getting remembered for one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, he was the guy in the entire Superman franchise.
I wonder whether if you stopped like 100 people on the street, and said, "Oh, tell me something. Tell me a Gene Hackman movie."
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one would come for. Maybe it would be The French Connection because of that hat.
Yeah, the hat. I mean, the hat does a lot of the work.
But maybe it would be The Royal Tenenbaums simply because that is kind of the most recent hit that he had before entering retirement.
I think I like that as a very late film. I mean, I think he made a couple others right after that. I remember Runaway Jury. I actually kind of like Runaway Jury. That had
is that Richard Weisz and
John Cusack, isn't it?
John Cusack. That's it. Yeah.
I like that film. I thought that was pretty intriguing. It's probably one of those. Oh God, who's that writer? Michael Crichton or.
I think it's John Grisham, isn't it?
Is it Grisham? Yeah.
That guy who churns out.
That guy. Those two guys. I think Crichton and Grisham are the same guy, honestly. It's like one dude. I like the Royal Tenenbaums for him because it's interesting that he seemed unhinged on set a little bit because I think it's a great part for him. It's quirky. He's funny. I wonder if he tapped into the experience of having a loose relationship with his own father, because he's kind of this distant father to those kids, and they do all right, but they're all untethered one way or another. And I think he holds that film down, even though the character's job is to not hold the film down in a certain way, right? So he just has this wonderful appeal, and I like that film as a Wes Anderson film. Also, I think it's one of his better ones. But I'm not surprised that he would get a little bit mad at Wes Anderson on set. So. I like that role for him in so many ways. Did you just run out of tape? I think we just ran out of reel to reel. Are we still recording? Reel to reel. effing real.
Yeah, that's the problem with you can only record like about 22 minutes if you record it at 15 inches. 15 inches per second, I think, isn't it?
Oh, wow.
These tapes run really fast. These tapes run fast.
Well, that's why I think we've stopped because it's spinning around and the tape is flapping all over the place.
I think we've definitely got another 5 minutes.